years. We got a small joint venture in Milan as well, an office in Cape Town. And about 8 years ago, we got involved in the CBD with the Maboneng Precinct. And I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's a mixed-use destination in the Eastern Geography. At the moment, it was about 50-odd buildings. From an architectural perspective, also to give a bit of background to that, we were the exclusive architects working on the Maboneng Precinct from 2008 to 2015. We actually started the Maboneng Precinct by putting an offer to purchase on the first building together with Jonathan Liebman. It was in May 2008. And then after the first development, Jonathan decided to continue and to create a very large company. We remained as exclusive architects until 2015. In 2014, we started handing over work to other firms like Local Studio, the Giant, which is now in one building, Tech from New York, was also exclusively with containers. And in 2015, we withdrew completely from Maboneng, and now we're pursuing other projects, mainly new builds and not urban regeneration. We still do a little bit of urban regeneration, but not from Maboneng. So, really, just from a developer's perspective, the growth of the company, this is really a snapshot. The first building, when we put the offer for Arts of Main, we paid 5 million for Arts of Main, and the refurbishment cost was about 5. The final value was about 20. After 8 years, the developer owns, I think, close to 100 buildings between Joburg and Pretoria, I think they started. And recently, in April, Ranch Merchant Property acquired 20% of the company for 300 million, so values of about 1.5 billion. That Jonathan has managed to do in the space of 8 years. So the growth of the company has been insane. I mean, it's been like a company, but the difference is that a property development company is to grow in the real world, it's got to grow in bricks and mortar and people, and deal with local authorities and everything else, and raise clients. So it's not a software company or an internet company that has certainly some hardware to deal with, and some data centers and so on, but really the growth of the property company is directly proportional to, directly linked to the square meters of the building. So somehow opportunities managed to defeat the square cube law, and they haven't collapsed in a heap, and they're actually still going nicely. Just to give a sense a little bit of, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we moved through scales, from the urban design scale to the building scale, to the small detail scale, and how we managed to put the focus on all these different levels of design throughout these really breakneck growth. And also while we set up a dedicated separate office in Maboneng and people that was working only for Maboneng property. What also had, I just want to give you just a little bit of physical context to Maboneng. What really had, I think, to grow so well, besides the factors we talked about, is that it was physically delimited by Fox Street and Main Street, north and south, by Jewel City on the Joburg CBD side. So despite being very close to the Joburg CBD and all the infrastructure and the people, there was a great security kind of block in between the CBD and the Maboneng. The blocked traffic, kind of had tremendous security and other things. And JP Railway on the other side, JP Station and the railway provided another strong physical barrier. So it was almost like a long rectangle that became a pressure cooker, very, very kind of focused. The development was very focused on in this long rectangle of Fox Street, in between Market and Main Street. So that's the extent of the same Maboneng south. The first big phase of Maboneng was south of Market Street. The next phase is on the north of Market Street, and is a little bit less delimited also because at the time the company was already quite big, and they don't really impose themselves limits as far as the scale of what they do. They're actually looking at projects from the EPSA precinct all the way to JP Station, they're looking at from south of Hillborough all the way south of Maboneng. So it's become very kind of spread out, and also Pretoria. So it's not limited anymore. But the beginning was quite kind of concentrated in this area, which helped the focus to very fast growth. In terms of the philosophy, so to keep a focus on this process, which was really quite crazy, we kept the eye on certain principles. So in the 20th century modernism, we have form follows function. 21st century, form follows fiction. The phrase from Montesquieu. So you have a narrative before you design a building, and the building is informed by the narrative and the story, whichever it is. And Maboneng we try to bring together the two and also respect the context a lot. So we follow the context, fiction, and explain why, and function, of course. So the urban design approach, so now we go to the big scale. The urban design approach was about analyzing and improving what was there. So this is an argument that applies to, I think, all urban regenerations in the world, especially to the ones in Africa. So we're dealing with a city that was designed between the 19th century and the 20th century, especially in the area where Maboneng is light industrial, and we're turning that hard infrastructure into something that is now residential, leisure, offices, startups, retail, events, and whatever. So very, very different function, different culture, an unsegregated culture, very open, very, very permeable. So what we can analyze is the context of Maboneng in relation to the city, and I touched on that briefly before. It's near the city, but separated by the Jewel City Precinct. Bus services were available and abundant. Schools and other public services were erratically available, but they were there. The interesting thing is that the police station, the General Police Station, which is next to Maboneng, is protected by coin security. So we had a couple of interesting years when we started. It was quite an interesting environment. So there are a couple of little primary schools. There are more schools that Jonathan Liebman has then developed, and developed Spark. Roads and other accessibility, that was really a plus for the area, because you come out of the Juslovo flyover, and there is a field directly to the middle of Maboneng. There is field from the other side, from that for you. But at the same time, somehow the Jewel City Precinct protects the Maboneng area from too much traffic and too much congestion. There's other accessibility to Jeppe Station, and then the developer created the Maboneng buses, the private buses to take people from Maboneng to the country stations, and forces them to watch TED Talks in the trip, with the screen of TED Talks, so you can get educated while you get to Caltrain. Parking, very important, is the lungs of any commercial development, so we really look to squeezing parking wherever we could find it, so space for it. Very difficult because the old buildings of the areas don't have parkings. There may be small basements with parking for 7 or 8 cars, so we have to get a bit creative about that. The building scale versus the road size was very interesting for us, because mainly the buildings are small and medium sized, so the sunlight comes in nicely, there's good ventilation in the streets, so it's quite a healthy urban fabric, urban scale. The existing retail that was there, as much as possible, was retained and even boosted. So some guys that struggling small businesses were given better premises for free for 6 months. They got advertising on social media, and some businesses that really flourished because of the change. And that also is worth making a brief point. Sometimes we get to the Maboneng is bad because of gentrification. Maboneng is not gentrification. Gentrification is when Spitalfields in London, some developer caused the move of like 1 million Pakistani families to another area because they built 50,000 square meters of offices for lawyers, because it was next to the city. Gentrification is when you actually displace a community that is there, there's an economy, then you bring in a much higher income, later in the area. In Maboneng, hardly anybody was living there. Most of the buildings were empty. Most of the buildings were in a state of decay. The people that were living there, and in fact, mostly provided better accommodation to a side company of perpetuity, which is not very well known. It's called Bajala, and actually the scope of Bajala is to take bad buildings near Maboneng and upgrade them and make them sanitary, and actually, to get the people that live in the area in very bad condition, in slum type of condition, to live in proper accommodation. So just an aside about, I keep hearing now gentrification is like, it's a completely different dynamic. There wasn't an economy there. Now there's like a $500 million rent economy there. There weren't shops, now there's shops. There wasn't employment, now there's employment. There were 2 small schools, now there's 6. So it's different from gentrification. Existing trees and parks. The area had beautiful big trees already. So we layered kind of avenues of green wherever it was, and wherever possible also used internal orchards and greenified them. Looked at the use of art pavements in other public space, for example, making street gyms on where the pavements are big enough, and the appropriation of space. So, for example, the space under the flyover doubles up as parking, sometimes it doubles up as market, sometimes people just live there for a while. It's kind of there are layers of space that are flexible in the area, and then energy sustainability. I think we can look at that a little bit when we look at example. I'm just going to read some boring theory for 5 minutes and show some pretty pictures. The architectural approach, so the building scale, we look at the research history of the building, very important. With each building we looked at the research history. We drew from the history or invented a narrative, soul and personality of the building. For example, the building called the Rocket Factory was a tire and recycling factory, but it had this structure that looks like a rocket on the roof. And Jonathan came up with the story that it was the secret base for a secret space program for the government. And the whole building is themed like a spaceship, and it's got artwork by Marcus Spector that is taken from astronomy, and every detail is detailed like a door of a spacecraft. And there's actually a rocket, and we built a rocket on the roof, that you can see if you look at it. So there is a narrative that makes guides the team and makes the experience interesting for the people that use the building. To have an iconic anchor like Arthur Main was very fortunate to have William Kentridge, and the case study I'll show you now, and the open working space, include always an artist collaboration at this scale, include an installation to form part of the lighthouse project that I'll explain now, and create bespoke details, the lighting, the render, signage, landscape as much as possible. So permeability, so open up the rhythm to the streets. It's very unusual in Joburg, and also bring pedestrian traffic into the building, into the courtyards of the building. So that the ground level of the precinct doesn't have private and public areas as much as possible. It's all public. So it's not like streets and then walls and then it's private. It's kind of as permeable as possible in a horizontal way. And then the activation. So there's always a crazy launch party at the beginning, the repeated events of so-called culture and entertainment. So this is a little bit, I want to give a key to read the case study that I'm going to show you now. And these are just a few images just to bring you there. So that's the extent of the Maboneng precinct at the time when we left. So these are the buildings that we designed between 2008 and 2015. It's 34 buildings over an area of maybe 50 hectares, and it was quite a process to get it done in 8 years. And with budgets that were very, very limited. 2008, South Main, 2010, Main Street Life, and Kruger Street, and then the student accommodation, MOD, the Museum of African Design and Artisan Loft, and then Maboneng North starts, and that's basically landscape, which is almost entirely part of this process. These are some main before and after, so you see some of the principles I talked about. Redefining and respecting the history, etc. The case study is the main change. I thought it was an interesting case study, and I'll explain you why now. So, this was a partly utilized light industrial building, and the intention was to turn it into a business and technology hub for Maboneng, so to attract small young businesses, upstarts, and people that couldn't for fancy office premises, but to the ears of businesses. So to be located quite centrally in the precinct. And the whole team of the development, the soul of the development is entrepreneurship, is technology, is really the development of the human potential. So, and this permeates all the design in the building. Has got a message to that effect, whether it's obvious or less obvious, has got a message towards the development of human potential and thereby the development of businesses and economy and technology and ideas. So this is on the left is what we looked at before, on the right is what we looked after the treatment. And this is how the building is divided. So the top floor is offices, the green one, the red one is the open co-working space, it's 1,000 square meter co-working space. And that is the anchor, that was like the anchor I was talking about before, is the co-working space that provides an opportunity for the small businesses that rent the little studios in the building to actually utilize the high-speed broadband and the meeting room and everything else. And the living room, which was conceived as a place where special plants are grown to stimulate thinking, interpret that as you want, but it's a very fun place to be on a Sunday afternoon. On the ground floor, the blue is the retail, and this is the inside. And you can see the extent of the detail. So we did always start from urban scale and went down to the building scale, and then went down to design the furniture and the details of it, and the interior design of almost Maboneng for the period. So this was actually the developer's offices at the time, the design of the furniture and everything else. This is the open, so that's the co-working space that's accessible to the small businesses and the workshops and the retail in the precinct, not only in the building, in fact. And the living room. And this is an example of how the philosophy of the soul of the building permeates into the details. So here's a series of quotes, here's the crazy ones. The rebels, the misfits, the troublemakers. So these are quotes by Steve Jobs or by famous entrepreneurs or artists that are meant to stimulate thinking, stimulate ambition, and they're all over the building. They're written on the wall, and they're written on the ceilings, and when you open the door, you find the surprise of some quote, which is like that. And the door handle represents turning a leaf, turning a page. So there's obvious or less obvious, and that's the initial sketches of the reception desk, and how very, very, very limited budgets we created the reception by just stripping off the plaster and adding some plywood, adding a mirror and some lighting, and getting an effect of a kind of a change. So also this one symbolizes the change. The rough brickwork and the new plywood was about turning a leaf, changing from improving life, creating businesses, developing the human potential and so on. If you want to talk like that. That's the open, where we designed everything from the furniture to the color scheme to the space planning. And 2012, we opened in Cape Town recently. The furniture is designed so that you can just power electricity, you can recharge your laptop, and there's various facilities to allow to work and a minimum overhead. This is Jonathan Liebman's office. And then the building on a bigger scale has got some great technology then embedded. So the chimneys that you see on the right hand side of the drawing is for natural ventilation of the building to extract hot air from the building. The louvers that you see on the left and the western side, because of the budgets, we couldn't louver the entire building. So what we did a sun study of how the shadows are cast by the building next door. I forgot which is that. So we did a sun study of the hottest months of the year, where does the sun fall, and where does the shadow of the building, and then we said, okay, we need actually only an L shape of shutters. So like that we save 60% of the budget of the shutters. So the whole building is being considered to have green technology embedded. There's double glazing, there is water filtration, and is quite, and also the design of these chimneys is such that southwest sun doesn't penetrate these windows. So really squeezing and pulling the budget, we managed to do quite a sustainable building, and also we left exposed all the services so that people, the users of the building, would be, in a sense, learning about building technology just by walking through the passages of the building and looking at what goes on in terms of services. So, and these are just really the living room. Just briefly, the little green thing at the top is part of the Lighthouse project. The Lighthouse project are installations that are on the top of each building on Maboneng. Here we go again on the urban design scale, because each building in Maboneng has got an artist installation on the roof, which is a lighthouse. It's meant to be a lighthouse and has a certain meaning or idea. So this is for the main change. This is the one for Arts on Main. This is the one by Michael Spotsky, which kind of blends together the kind of very meaning type of guardhouse construction with the utopian geodesic dome into one hybrid. It is geodesic dome and guardhouse. That's the main change. That's the rocket. And this is just some other designs that are not yet built that we did before we left. That is that's an artist. This is the lighthouse for this particular building. So each building has that layer, and that layer is spread throughout the urban scale of the development. That's the cloud we designed for the aerial empire. And this is again the sculpture of the main change. It has got a little brother in Switzerland, in St. Moritz. So again, global scale. So it was quite a quick kind of view of what happened in this crazy 5-6 years in Maboneng. So just to wrap up, urban scale, city scale, and tiny, very careful, very thoughtful detailing that is meaningful and is accessible when you actually experience the building. Thank you very much.